Hi, everyone. Welcome back to the Lighthouse sessions. I'm really excited to have my new friend Martise Armstrong with me. And for those listening, and I'm going to speak in code right now. If you know, you know. If you don't know, reach out and ask. Martise is a fellow INFJ. We've just spent 20 minutes nerding out about what it's like to be unusual and different. He's a father, and he is an expert in sales. So my audience is visionary entrepreneurs, and they care more about life lessons than they care about sales pitches. But Martise, why don't you introduce yourself, and then we're going to jump right back into the conversation talking about the power of listening.
Yeah. So appreciate you, Jeff, bringing me on. So just the short history of myself. Like you said, I'm in sales. I'm an introvert, INFJ, who's been in sales for 20 years. And I love what I do. Absolutely. I have a young son who is my world, with my wife here in Florida. And everything about me is just trying to find purpose and balance in everything that I do. So that's me in a nutshell.
I love it. Now, before we hit record, and I pity my audience because they always miss the first conversation where we're getting to know each other. You and I were having a good disagreement, as only INFJs can do, where you had said, and I'm going to paraphrase and feel free to correct me, you more or less said that you're an introvert and that's unusual in sales. And I said I disagree because in my experience, we have an unnatural ability. And I wish I was smart enough to record those moments because it's funny when we both look at it and go, oh. So
right.
let's talk about your life in sales, because a lot of people will say you're an introvert, you can't do sales.
Mm-hmm.
And in my experience, and we were talking about this, we're either top or bottom. We don't sit in the middle.
Yeah.
And you were being humble and not tooting your own horn, so I'm going to toot it for you. You were sitting at the top. So let's talk about, to my visionary leaders that are watching, let's talk about this introverts can't be in sales myth, because I think we need to bust it open.
It's my biggest pet peeve, to be honest with you, Jeff. And I think I mentioned to you before, I think it just breaks people's brains. And they meet me and they say, oh, this quiet guy, he's not the best speaker. What do you do for a living? Oh, I'm in sales. How long have you been in sales? 20 years. Mind blown. How did you survive 20 years? And the truth is, like I mentioned to you earlier, it's I really do believe that, like, I love sales. A lot of people hate sales. They hate salespeople, and there's a reason for that. But I love sales because I truly think it's one of the most, and I might be oversaying this, but one of the purest forms, in my opinion, of human interaction. Specifically as it relates to business, obviously, but it's very pure because, in my opinion, when you do sales the right way, you're actually helping people.
Yeah.
And at the end of the transaction, they should say, thank you.
Yes. So Martise, I'm going to share my very first mentor in the sales space. I was very lucky because in hindsight, I'm pretty sure he was INFJ as well. He taught me that sales done right is the highest form of service you can offer another human being.
Mm-hmm.
And the caveat was because you're genuinely solving a problem they have.
Right.
Now, you and I both know that the vast majority of sales training out there is all about, overcoming objections and manipulating the environment.
Right.
That's not what you and I are talking about, is it?
No, I can't. I don't like that. It's icky, and it's icky to everybody. That's the thing.
Yeah.
No, it should be more of I kind of view it more as like a kind kind of like a doctor-patient relationship more than anything. And it's more about me listening, asking questions, and I try to detach myself as much as possible. And at the end of the day, kind of like a surgeon would do to his patient, if a good surgeon, an honest surgeon, if the person really needs surgery and there's an alternative, then he should let the person know that. And I don't think it's any different in sales. It shouldn't be.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it's fascinating because I've actually gotten more referrals from people that I turn down because they come to me and say, Jeff, I'm looking to buy this product and I think this is what I need. And it's like, you're asking for the Ferrari and you want the Ferrari pricing. I think you actually need to go buy a bicycle, and here's why.
Right.
And it was funny because a lot of people are like, oh, I had a sales manager. I called him my micromanager. He'd be like, oh my God, you had that. It was a hot lead. Why did you let them go? And I'm like, because they're not a fit. He's like, oh, you got to meet a quota. You got to close. And I'm like, he'll be back. And, they would always come back when they knew they were ready. And I thought, to me, that was what sales should be. But, unfortunately, most sales managers are looking at their bonus and they're looking at quarterly targets. Is that fair?
Yeah. I didn't know you were in sales. That's cool.
I did it. I did it to prove I could. And, again, it's funny because everybody said, oh, you're an introvert, you can't do it. But the fascinating thing was I struggled in sales for years because everybody told me, here's how you should do sales.
Right.
And, I took a couple of those, online courses, and I joined some communities, and it was all about, here are the emotional levers to make somebody buy, and, the fake, here's how to go walk in. And, I actually took one course, I'm not kidding. It was how to read the person's office to find the thing that you're going to fake interest in to connect with them.
Mm-hmm.
And I was like, this, and I struggled because it all felt so terrible. It was like, it was against my nature. It was icky. And, overcoming objections, like I have to ask my wife or I don't have the money. And it was like, again, if I can manipulate somebody and I feel terrible and then I close the deal, I'm going to not sleep at night. Whereas for me, when I found genuinely, I had a couple of mentors early on that taught me to fall in love with my prospect and to genuinely listen. I got really good at solving problems that weren't necessarily related to what I sold. And because of that, I got, I was the guy I would say, oh, you need a good attorney here, go talk to this person. You need a new accountant, go talk to this person. I solved problems that weren't mine to solve. And oddly, then the accountant or the attorney would call and say, hey, you sent so-and-so over to me. Thank you. How can I repay you? Help, like it became, it's funny. And you talked about letting go of the sale. And I think that's the one. When I first started in sales, I struggled with, because it was like, but I need my commission. How do I let go of the outcome? And then, as you said, I figured out, a mentor gave me the doctor reframe, and I was like, oh, that makes sense. A doctor's not going to prescribe treatment until they know what's wrong with you.
Well, they shouldn't.
They shouldn't. It's called malpractice, right?
Believe it or not, I had a few doctors. I don't know if you've ever had the experience of that. So I've had a couple of experiences where I've had something going on. I go to the doctor, and then the doctor, without even letting me finish my sentence, he's already prescribing me some sort of medication. I remember one time in particular, I walked out of there feeling unheard, just horrible. And more importantly, you know what I did with that recommendation? I think I threw it out the window. I didn't. It's like, how do I know that this is really going to help me? He didn't even hear what was going on. And so there is no trust. And so the best way to build trust is listening. Just really listen. And that comes from just really caring about people. Like I just have a natural desire to help people, to want to help people.
Yeah.
And I think that leans well with sales. So I like it.
And honestly, I don't know you that well. We just met, but I can also tell you do care genuinely. And I got to tell you, I once taught a room of salespeople my method of sales, and it was a huge aha moment. So audience mismatch is huge. My audience was supposed to be, I was told I was speaking to a room full of accountants, and I was teaching them how to sell their extra services. So I showed up at the event, and because of a weird quirk, the title was Ethical Selling for Professionals. Oddly, the room got filled quickly with insurance salesmen.
Interesting.
So all the accountants couldn't get in. And honestly, I think accountants, they look at sales and go, ew.
Right.
So it was weird because I thought I was talking to a room full of accountants who naturally listen. They're more likely to be introverts than extroverts, and they genuinely care about the client.
Right.
So I walked into the room with those assumptions in my head, and I was teaching, and I thought I was having the best day ever because the audience was engaged and they're asking all kinds of questions. And then 10 minutes to go, one guy raises his hand, and you're going to love this. He says, okay, Jeff, your stuff is brilliant. I love it. You're talking about empathy, you're understanding, you're listening, caring about the client, being sincere, being authentic. I have one question. I said, okay, great. We're on the right page. I was all excited. His question punched me in the gut and left me silent. I was just shocked. He said, how do you fake sincerity? He said, I can't implement any of this until you teach us that. And I'm not kidding. He actually said, is this what you hold back for your ongoing training? And my heart sank, and I was like, okay, show of hands. Who else here in the room has that question? And I'm not kidding. 100 people in the room, 100 people put up their hand. And I said, okay, I'm curious. How many of you are actually accountants? No hands. But that was the aha moment. And I think that's what most salespeople miss is you can't fake sincerity. Like literally by definition, you can't fake it.
Right. True. By definition, it's true. Yeah.
But it was just fascinating to me that I was teaching empathy and problem solving and relationship building, and the entire room heard it as, here's how you manipulate people.
Yeah.
And I was like, no, that's not the message. Stop.
Yeah. And it's sad that was a serious question. But, I don't know. I wonder why that is. Why is it that people don't want to, or why is it difficult for people to just be sincere with what they do? And I think that's why, obviously, I think everybody knows that the sales industry has such a bad reputation. It's horrible. You say you're a salesperson, and they look at you like you're the scum of the earth.
Yeah.
But I just wish people knew like what real sales is. And that's why I try to avoid the title as much as possible when I'm talking to people. Because I don't personally consider myself a salesperson, to be honest with you. Because if all you do is sell, then that role shouldn't exist. You should bring some sort of value to them.
Let's talk more about that. I'm just going to share a friend of mine. He bought a franchise teaching sales, and his mom told everybody, "Oh, my son's unemployed," because she didn't want to say he's in sales. Like, now, for the record, he does sales from the heart, and I think that's it. Now, let's talk about service and how you approach sales, because I think that's the problem. Everybody out there, and I mean, seriously, you go on social media for 5 seconds and you'll get invited to 10,000 courses on how to, I call it stranger danger sales. It's like they're going to bag me and pull me into a van,
Yeah.
So how do you build trust? And for anybody listening, we're actually talking about trust. So first of all, let's define trust in your words and then talk about how you build it.
Well, I think obviously trust, to me is just somebody that sees you as genuinely caring about them. So I always go back to the doctor example because for some reason, I think that's the most genuine
It should be
example of an interaction of some person helping another person, and there's money involved. That's essentially what sales is, right? Most people don't go to the doctor for free. Maybe they do. I don't know. But when you trust your doctor, why? Because when you go to him, if he's a good doctor, he listens to you. He hears you. He asks follow-up questions. That's when you really feel good. Oh, he's really listening. He's asking follow-up questions.
Yeah, I hate that.
Exactly. And then a really good doctor, in my opinion, even asks you to show you that they care. They'll say something like, "Well, how does that make you feel?" Right?
Yeah.
They just whatever that makes it seem like they genuinely care about you. And then when you couple that with industry expertise of whatever it is that you're selling, in other words, if the customer or the prospect sees you as an expert in that field in some way, shape, or form, either through your background or just by your speaking with them, they can sense it. Then they begin to trust you. It's like, okay, this guy not only cares about me, but he knows what he's talking about, so I can believe what he's saying, what he's suggesting and recommending to me. So that's trust as it relates to sales.
And for the record, you can't fake trust any more than you can fake sincerity.
Yeah. You can't force somebody to trust you. I think that's just something that comes. Yes, it comes from being sincere.
Yeah,
exactly. Yeah,
I love it, and I think we can all remember a time when someone made us feel either less than, or it's like a hungry dog licking its chops at a steak. That is not where trust is built. Now I'm going to ask you a curveball question, and just honestly, I trust you enough. We're going to have a fun conversation. Who has influenced you the most in how you approach sales, and why?
Well, I'll tell you, I think I went through a similar experience that you did, where you try to just copycat what everybody else is doing, and it feels horrible, and you're wondering, contemplating like what you're doing with your life. So I went through that, but what's interesting is I actually have a background where, because of, I don't want to get too religious on the podcast, but I come from a background where I would go out door to door to help people learn more about the Bible. We would have conversations about life and about God and things of that nature. That's what I did ever since I was like 8 years old. And obviously, you're not out there trying to sell per se, but you're having conversations. And I loved it. And then I would see people loving what they heard, and then even changing their life for the better. So that was a wonderful experience growing up. Now, I didn't know it then, but that was like a good basis for me to learn how to interact with people in a sincere way, with complete strangers, to do something, to talk about something that's going to help them. And for some reason, I built that basis over, a decade or two. And then when I got into sales, I just threw it out the window and started copying everybody else and doing all that crazy stuff. But it wasn't until
because they tell you that's the way to do it, right?
Exactly. Everybody does it. They say that's the way to do it. You got to overcome the objection. You get 5 no's to get to a yes, or whatever they say. ask the question 10 different ways and maybe they'll say yes.
Yeah.
But it wasn't until I had a point of reflection. I've been listening to different things. I think I heard somebody say something similar. I'm like, you know what? That's what I've been doing since I was a kid. Why don't I go back to that?
Yeah.
And just start talking to people and start showing personal interest in them. And it works. And I don't want to say it works like it's a strategy, like you're trying to,
Yeah.
but that's the way it should be.
That is the great irony of it, is when you genuinely put the other person's needs first, it works.
Mm-hmm.
But the minute you start doing it because you know it works, it doesn't work.
Yes.
You know, and I'll give you a really funny example. When I was in university, some religious group in our area decided to go knocking on doors and trying to reform. It was a university community.
Mm-hmm.
And they knocked on the door Saturday morning at like 8 a.m. and they told me I was going straight to hell. And I said, great, I'll see you there. Slammed the door. And, the way they came at me, it was, I'm going to hell, and they were there to save me, but it was about them saving me, not about me being saved.
Yeah, right.
And the language is so close, but for years, my biggest influence has been Bob Berg and John David Mann. Reading The Go-Giver, I was like, oh my God, that's me. And whether you've read it or not, you're a go-giver, and I promise you're going to go read it and go, oh my God.
I'm going to jot that down, Go-Giver.
It's, early in my life, and I think, youth is wasted on the youth. We don't have the wisdom to do things, but I spent probably 20 years trying to be a better salesperson and judging it based on the wrong things, quotas and blah, blah, blah. And another book I read, it's called Winning on Purpose by Fred Reichheld. He talks about net lives enriched as his metric. And I went, oh my God, that's the language that resonates with me, is if you're in sales and you're helping people, the original world's greatest salesperson, as per the Guinness World Book of Records, is Joe Girard, and he wrote a book called How to Sell Anything to Anyone. I think that's the title. But basically, the whole gist of it was every month he would send out handwritten greeting cards saying, I like you.
Yeah, I remember that.
And I can't remember the decade. It was in the 60s or 70s. He sold more cars than anybody before, or I think since, just by being genuine and saying, I like you, let's do business. And it is fascinating to me that all of the sales gurus out there, they're preaching a method that doesn't work well. It's kind of, again, if it goes against your soul, you're not going to do it long term, right?
Right. Exactly. Yep. So that's interesting that you mentioned that too, because I do remember hearing about that story. Just handwritten note. Hey, this guy really, he's being sincere. He really cares.
Yep. And at his peak, I think I'm going from old memory of the book. I haven't reread it in a while, but I think he had 4 or 5 people full time. All they did, and I think he was sending out something like 13,000 cards a month. But that was his business. And, the fascinating thing was he sold more cars than most dealerships do.
Wow. Yeah.
And it was just genuine. Like, again, you go to a car dealer and they're like, okay, well, this one gives me the best commission, so you should buy it. Okay, they don't say that out loud, but I hear it.
That's what it is. Yeah.
And, it's like, I got a wife and 2 kids. I do not need a 2-seater sports car.
Yeah, exactly. Have you ever heard of Michael Oliver?
I have not. Tell me more.
So he has I think the book is called Natural Selling. and it's all about just what we're talking about. And he's one of the guys that I like to hear from. I think that his whole thing is just about just being genuine. Now, he actually, what's interesting, and I don't want to put anybody down, so I'm not going to name any names, but he actually trained another gentleman that is a huge sales trainer today. And but the problem with this huge sales trainer is that he took Michael Oliver's wonderful teachings and approach of like natural selling, being genuine, sincere, and then he turned it into like the question the gentleman had at your conference.
I'm laughing because I just found the threads on Google, and I know who you're not talking about.
Okay. So everything is about a technique. How do you sound sincere? How do you sound? Yeah. What's the right?
I think I lasted.
Right,
I think I lasted 10 minutes in his program, and I went, whoa! This is not what I expected. Like, yeah, it was. It was almost felt like, here's how you build trust after you've abducted somebody and beaten them. It's like. Sorry, that. Yeah, and I appreciate that. That says something about you and I. We're not going to name names, but to each their own. But it is always fascinating how someone will come out with trust. And I have like a small group of people I follow on that space. The Challenger sale, I believe, I don't know the person individually, but I believe he believes what I believe. Spin selling is another one. Bob Berg and John David Mann, they resonate with my soul because it is not an act. It is all about relationships, but it makes me cringe. And I think this is where I resisted early in my career. I would go to these things and they'd lead with the right words. Here's how to build trust, blah, blah, blah. And then you'd get in and you're like, oh my God, it's a house of cards and we're stacking deceit upon deceit. I'm going to be blunt. First of all, I don't have the personality to want to be a professional liar. But secondly, I don't have the good enough memory to keep track of lies. So I'm like, honesty, let's just dive in, right?
Right. Exactly. Let's just do this. Let's not keep up the game. Yeah.
I once got in trouble. I walked into a client's, and this was one everybody in our company had been chasing for years, couldn't get in the door. And I finally got in the door, and my micromanager was giving me all these tips and hints. And I was like, yeah, whatever. And when I got in, I saw the room. I was in a boardroom with all of their key decision makers, arms crossed, angry faces. So I literally walked in and they had a whiteboard, and I said, can I use your whiteboard? And they're all, sure. And I wrote down product name sucks, ... And I turned around and they're all smiling. And I said, tell you what, if you guys can give me something that nobody else has given me, I will buy you guys lunch. Now, between you and me, I was going to buy them lunch anyways. But I was given 20 minutes. An hour and a half later, I was done writing. And I'm like, okay, I'm not leaving until we all agree that this is what's wrong with the product. And they were all, so do we get lunch? And I'm like, yeah, okay, you guys get lunch. But the thing was, it was like I let all the steam out of the room. Yeah. And I went back and I told my boss what I'd done. And he's like, what the hell's wrong with you? And the next day they called and basically placed a national multi-million-dollar order because I was the first person who listened to them. Now, you'll love this because trust goes all ways, but my micromanager said, we've spent 10 years nurturing that relationship. You don't get the commission. And
of course,
I was like, you know what? I didn't like you before. Now I can see who you are. I quit. And he's like, but you can't quit. You've got this big deal and blah, blah, blah. And I'm like, no, you've told me who you are. I believe you.
Yeah. Boy, let's not get into Management strategies. I think that that's a huge miss as well in today's society, for similar reasons.
Yeah.
Similar reasons.
I love it. Now, Martise, you are going to be back as a guest in the future. Well, if it serves you, I would love to have you back.
Yeah.
What do you wish I would have asked you? What's one thing you'd like to share that I haven't?
No, I just, my whole thing that I want to do in my life, and I hope to do in business, is to try to kind of spread the word, so to speak, as to just what we were talking about today. Like whether it's in sales, in business in general, in management, which is a whole nother topic. Why it's so important just to be as, I hate to overuse the word, but genuine as possible, right? Just as sincere and as real as possible, especially in the business world. Because for some reason, people think that being hard-nosed, whether it's in sales or in management, hard-nosed, push, like that's actually going to do something. But really, if you take a step back, and this is the message, take a step back, take a deep breath, and really focus on people. Once you do that, success is going to follow you. You won't be able to get away from it. And that's just a natural truth of life.
I love it. I love it. And last real hard question, where can people go to connect with you, get to know more about you and what you do?
For the most part, I'm just on LinkedIn. Feel free to reach out to me there, Martise Armstrong. And I'm always willing to connect with anybody.
I love it. And I will endorse you as a certified INFJ. You are one of us. So for those who know what that means, reach out. Martise, I know you're busy, and I really appreciate you taking the time to hang out with me.
Yeah, absolutely. It's a huge pleasure. Thank you so much.